A man honks the car horn, and the distant woman responds in the same manner. If the horn sounds, it means the saviors are on their way. Everyone immediately becomes tense, preparing for the upcoming war. The battle has been meticulously planned, and now everyone takes their positions. As the sky darkens, silence falls over the hilltop. This is the eve before the storm. All await the arrival of the enemy. Soon, those on the wall spot movement in the distance. The saviors have arrived. Several vehicles are approaching this way. Jerry waves towards them from inside. Maggie is the commander for tonight's operation.
Here we go.
Outside the hilltop, a procession of vehicles arrives at the gate. Negan was nowhere to be seen. Simon felt the air was sweet. He could do whatever he wanted tonight. Maggie intends to communicate with Negan through the radio, but it's Simon who answers. They exchange harsh words. Maggie tells Simon directly, "We have 38 hostages in our hands. If you don't withdraw, you'll be collecting bodies. Leave, and I might spare their lives." After speaking, Maggie hands the radio to the hostage Alden behind her. Alden also cooperated.
It's too nice a night to spend it dying slow, don't you think, Simon?
Simon doesn't hesitate. Simon didn't even hesitate to say to Maggie, "It's a shame, woman, that the saviors you've captured are a wreck. They got themselves into trouble and we only reward those who don't get caught, and the ones who can solve their own problems. Threatening me with this trash? I have only one thing to say to that: go to hell." Maggie falls silent after hearing this. The captives are not as valuable as she thought. Simon was also annoyed that this woman dared to threaten him, so he orders his men not to bother with intimidation anymore. Now, their task is to eliminate everyone inside. Dwight, as the infiltrator, tries to stop Simon, but Negan isn't there and Simon won't even listen to him. At this moment, a motorcycle approaches them. It's Daryl returning, and the hilltop opens its gates for him. The saviors see an excellent opportunity and follow the car into the compound. Little do they know it's part of Rick's strategy. A school bus blocks them at the gate. Upon Maggie's command, figures rise from behind obstacles all around them. They open fire madly towards the gate. The saviors were caught off guard just as they entered. Maggie watches the battlefield. Everything going according to plan. Simon is pinned down by gunfire, hiding in his car, unable to move. He can only use the radio to command his people outside to shoot arrows inside. Indeed, as the arrows fly, the hilltop is immediately under pressure. Several are hit on the spot. Maggie has no choice but to order the hostages inside, not letting them die in vain out here. Maggie observed for a while but still didn't spot Negan's presence. Tobin maneuvered behind the gate and ambushed the saviors, hitting 2 archers. When Tobin peeked out again, a man stabbed him in the abdomen, incapacitating him instantly. The man intended to finish Tobin off, but Carol's gunshot from a distance saved him. Carol hurried over to check on Tobin's condition. Siddiq arrived as well, instructing Carol to join the fight while he took charge here. Siddiq is a trainee surgeon. Simon is also hiding behind the wooden board at this moment. From where he has a clear view of the woman who is shooting, he prepared to launch a surprise attack. Dwight realized the woman was Tara before he could come up with a plan to stop it. Simon charged out. Simon approached Tara silently, with Dwight close behind. Tara was engrossed in the battle and completely unaware. Daryl noticed the 2 suspicious figures and, turning his head, understood their intent. Simon is about to swing an axe at Tara, but Dwight beats him to it. Tara was hit and fell to the ground. Simon, seeing his objective fulfilled, quickly fled. Tara wasn't dead, just wounded in the shoulder. At this point, the lights in the building shattered, signaling Maggie's planned second phase could commence. Explosive devices were hurled into the saviors' midst, while others swiftly smashed the headlights of their vehicles. Everyone from the hilltop hid, and silence replaced the sound of gunfire in the courtyard. After a while, Simon cautiously poked his head out, instructing his men to survey the surroundings. The saviors were bewildered as darkness enveloped the hilltop. They couldn't see anything or hear a sound. Simon didn't suspect a trap. He believed the hilltop couldn't fight back and had fled. Inside the building, only a few elderly, weak, and sick individuals remained, trembling in fear, proudly commanding his men to move around and pursue. Simon planned to enter the building and slaughter a few people out of frustration. Simon then moved inside with his man, whistling out of habit. Simon was thinking that the people inside were probably scared to death when they heard the whistle. Suddenly, the headlights turned on, and a hail of bullets answered Simon. Surviving saviors dashed to the right, seeking refuge behind a truck, but their reaction was within Rick's plan. The lights came on here, too. Rick brought his men out for a sweep. The saviors were disoriented and overwhelmed. Only a handful survived and fled in their vehicles. Maggie's face was marked with frustration. She wanted to exterminate these survivors. And that damn Negan, he didn't even show up. Early the next morning, the Hilltop began to clean up the mess and everyone was busy. Tara, who had just tended to her injuries, also assisted. In response to Dwight's ambush, Daryl cursed. Some people never change, always up to no good. In reality, neither of them had realized that Dwight's arrows lacked force, inadvertently serving as a subtle warning to Tara. Despite their victory, Maggie remained troubled. Her brow furrowed. The backyard was now filled with more graves. Sacrifices made last night. A portion of the group was injured and being treated inside the house. Most of the injuries resulted from arrows or other cold weapons. By evening, people from the 3 major communities had gathered in the building. Due to the large numbers, many were forced to sleep on the floor. The seriously injured stayed in beds in the infirmary and in their rooms. Around 3 o'clock in the early morning, a man woke up in the medical room. His responsibility was to tend to his injured companions. The man in the bed seemed to be in bad shape. His forehead was hot. He had a fever. He quickly got up to find a doctor, unaware that Tobin had also risen from his bed. An hour later, a woman on duty heard commotion from the medical room and went to the door to investigate. She felt liquid under her feet and looked down to see that it was blood, and it was all over the house. And then, soon after, the zombies in the medical room began moving towards the building. The people sleeping inside the building didn't even notice. 3 zombies entered the room. Even the man who had sustained minor injuries on the second-floor corridor had risen. Now a zombie too. Meanwhile, outside the building, the captives were sleeping. Young Henry approached the cell door. He knew that the saviors were locked up inside and wanted to find the killer of his brother. If he couldn't find the culprit, Henry was determined to kill everyone here. Gregory tried to manipulate Henry with sweet talk, attempting to trick him into opening the cell door. Alden, awakened by the commotion, overheard the conversation between Henry and Gregory. All Alden could do was tell Henry that it wouldn't make you feel any better. Meanwhile, agonizing screams echoed from within the building. They realized something was terribly wrong. Maggie walks out of the house and looks outside in disbelief. It's a mess. Zombies were rampaging through the lobby. Due to the lack of light, many hadn't yet comprehended what was happening and were bitten by the zombies. The woman was still struggling at this point, and was about to be bitten by a zombie. Luckily, Daryl came in time to save her. Ezekiel arrives but too late. The man's arm has been bitten by the zombie. Siddiq rushed forward, using a belt to quickly tie off the man's arm. Rick, who came next to him, also knew what to do. He had done it more than once. He lifted his axe and struck down. There was a scream. Jesus and Michonne are also working together to kill the mutated zombies, and then quickly evacuate those who are still alive. When he saw someone running out of the building, Jared gloated a little instead.
Music to my ears.
Was it you?
Jared was startled and certainly wouldn't admit to killing Benjamin. This boy would undoubtedly shoot without hesitation. Henry, unable to find the culprit, impulsively opened the cell door. Henry entered with a gun, intending to question them. However, a woman behind them suddenly turned into a zombie and attacked those around her. Henry became flustered. Seizing the confusion, Jared tackled Henry to the ground and wrested the rifle away from him. A portion of the captives followed Jared, fleeing the scene. Half an hour later, Rick and his group managed to eliminate all the zombies in the lobby. They suspected that the zombies had infiltrated unnoticed, but Daryl was surprised that they were all his own people. The 3 of them were puzzled. In another room, a woman was awakened by the commotion and opened her eyes to see Tobin transformed into a zombie. The woman struggled against him, but Carol arrived just in time to assist. Looking at this man, Carol is very sad, and now can only take care of it personally. Rick and the others quickly arrived upon hearing the commotion. Seeing everyone safe, they breathed a sigh of relief. However, they were baffled by how Tobin, who was never bitten by a zombie, had still turned. Tonight's events are too strange. Rick suddenly recalled something. While fighting Negan the previous day, he noticed that Negan's baseball bat was covered in zombie blood. Could it be that the saviors had smeared zombie blood on their weapons and blades? They were all a little surprised at how the saviors could be so vicious. It was an attempt to instill fear in them from within. The man on the bed suddenly said, "If that's the case, then it all makes sense." He had also been shot by an arrow and was now running a fever, which he believed to be an early sign of turning into a zombie. He felt disheartened, realizing he didn't have much time left. This is a longtime member of the Alexandria safe zone who's been through a lot together, and he's asked Rick to give him one last ride. Rick's head hung low. This was the last thing he wanted to see. In another room, Rosita and a few others were protecting the elderly and weak. Rick and Daryl entered, assuring them that the house was safe now. Tara wanted to inquire about the cause, but she noticed the odd atmosphere as Rick and Daryl stared at her. After a brief hesitation, Daryl revealed that zombie blood had been smeared on the weapons. Tara was taken aback, realizing she had been hit by Dwight's arrow. After a few seconds, Tara managed to accept the news. In the post-apocalyptic world, this kind of scenario has probably been fantasized many times. No one can guarantee that they will always survive. In the yard, Siddiq noticed that some captives had escaped and a few had turned into zombies. He actively moved forward to eliminate them. Just after killing one zombie, there was another taller zombie behind him, which made Siddiq a bit overwhelmed. Fortunately, Alden arrived with a hoe and helped Siddiq. Maggie and Jesus also arrived at the scene. Alden quickly explained that they were assisting. A child had opened the cell door. Some captives had fled, while others chose to stay and were now trying to close the gate. Maggie looked towards the gate and indeed saw several captive saviors resisting the zombies. She immediately instructed those around her to help, then turned to Alden and questioned why he didn't escape. Alden sincerely replied, "You've seen it yourself. To Negan and Simon, they're worthless, though they might not mean much to you either. The ones who stayed are genuinely sincere." Maggie fell silent. This act was enough to earn her acceptance of them. Early the next morning, all the fallen were buried, and a somber color hung over every face. Despite the apparent victory in the preceding battle, the cost had been devastatingly high. Rick's own mood was heavy, his thoughts a mystery as he turned and left the scene. Soon after, Rick changed his clothes, grabbed his rifle, and headed straight for Alden's location. Rick intended to inquire about the possible whereabouts of the captives. Alden analyzed the chances of them going back to the saviors as low. He'd heard them planning an escape before. Some injured and lacking supplies, they would likely have sought refuge in the old tavern down the hill. With the information obtained, Rick departed, but Alden called out to him. Alden knew what Rick was up to, so he pleaded. He knew it was too much to ask. He pleads with Rick to please not kill all of these captives if he finds them, and admits that some of them are just misguided and not inherently malicious. Rick nodded in agreement, signaling his willingness to grant Alden's favor. Meanwhile, Carol and Ezekiel realize that Henry is missing and they've searched the hilltop. Enid approached and informed them that Henry had opened the cell door the previous night, leading to the escape of some of the saviors. Henry himself was also nowhere to be found. Carol realizes that Henry must have followed the saviors out for revenge. On Tara's side, she didn't feel any abnormalities and had consulted a doctor who confirmed that she didn't exhibit any symptoms of fever. Tara realizes that it must have been Dwight who shot her with an arrow without zombie blood and missed on purpose. As noon approached, Morgan armed himself, preparing to venture outside. His purpose mirrored Rick's, to locate the escaped captives. Seeing Morgan's departure, Carol rushed over, assuming he was off to find Henry. However, Morgan candidly revealed that Henry had persistently asked about the identity of his brother's killer. Fearing that Henry's heart would be consumed by hatred, they had concealed the truth from him. If he'd killed that fucking Jared before, Henry wouldn't have to think about it. With these words, Morgan left without delay. Concerned for Morgan's state, Carol armed herself and joined him, also hoping to find the missing boy. Maggie and Rosita convened a meeting to strategize for the next onslaught from the saviors. Their ammunition was scarce after the previous battle. Daryl, however, remained optimistic, pointing out that the saviors' escape from the Walker Horde, coupled with their battle losses, had likely depleted their ammunition stores too. Rosita suddenly shrieks out, reminding everyone that they forgot about Eugene. Eugene can make bullets, so their stockpile will be constant. Fortunately, Rosita knew the location of the bullet-making machine. Meanwhile, Morgan and Carol, relying on tracks, scoured the area. Morgan caught sight of a small figure vanishing ahead. Was that not Henry? Urgently, Morgan shouted and gave chase. Carol was behind him, but she didn't see anything. When Morgan came up, Morgan also understands that he has killed too many people this period of time and will start to appear the state of insanity. He always imagined some characters and imagined the worst.
You know what it is.
You're not here. He's not here.
You were supposed to.
You are not here! He's dead. You know he is.
I came out here to keep an eye on you. I didn't come out here to look for him.
Morgan knew in his heart that bad things would always happen, so he had no hope that Henry was still alive. They followed the trail to a highway, where a horde of zombies roamed, fearlessly. Morgan aimed to cut through them. Carol notices something and tells Morgan to look that way. A zombie approached, impaled with a stick. Was it not Henry's? Carol's eyes were filled with tears, and she had a bad guess in her heart. Yet, Morgan coldly turned away, resuming his march. Deep down, he wished for the boy's safety, but he had grown disillusioned. The world held little hope. Yet, Carol, after a moment of contemplation, halted Morgan's departure. She wanted to convince him to search for Henry. This zombie is coming from the other direction. What if Henry is still alive? Morgan cut her off, stating that she knew the truth of what they'd find. Nevertheless, Carol, her voice quivering, implored Morgan to try, unwilling to let go without confirmation. Because of her cowardice, she did not find her daughter, and if she kept looking for a different result,
You can try to.
No. No, I can't. I watch him die. You save people. I have to.
When I tried to run, you found me. You knew I could come back. You saved me. And you can too.
I'm not strong like you. That wasn't me. I was there that whole time watching him, knowing that something would happen. I was waiting for it to happen, and then it did. Like it. I have to kill him. So I just have to. Like it always does. I have to.
Morgan's conflict is one that few people can understand, but his state is heartbreaking. Then they parted to do what they wanted to do now.